Hi, good evening. My name is Shreya, and I welcome you once again to the Dare Act chat series powered by the Grey Matter. Our endeavor with the series is to bring forward inspirational stories of lawyers who've taken up unconventional roles and career paths. To celebrate the International Women's Day, which is around the corner, the Grey Matter team has decided to dedicate the month of March to lovely ladies. And to begin with, our first guest for this month is a lovely, compassionate, and kind lady who's carved a unique niche for herself. She's an environmental and animal rights lawyer, lover, and activist. By passion, she's also a climate advocate. So please allow me to welcome Ambika Hiranandani. Hi, Ambika.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. We're thrilled to have you with us on Dare Act, and thank you for
Thank you
joining us
so
today.
much. Thank you so much for having me. I just hope my network is okay. I'm in the frame. Everything's fine. Okay,
All good,
thank
all
you.
good. You can
Thank
hear me
you.
loud and clear?
I can hear you.
Perfect. So, Ambika, my first question to you is, how did the 5 years at GLC shape you as a lawyer?
So, I feel that government law college was honestly like one of the best. I think that government law college was honestly one of the best experiences. The really fun thing about GLC is that like classes are so short, right? It's from like 7:30 to 10:30 and then you're done. Okay, which is either a good thing or a really bad thing. Now, I was one of those people, I always wanted to maximize my time. So our committees were really amazing in college, whether it was like our legal aid committee or it was our Spill International Law Committee. So all of our committees were so great. So I got involved with all the committees in college, and it gave me a lot of time to intern and to volunteer with different organizations, right? I feel like that's a big part of GLC, right? Because it's like once your lectures are done, you have time to do other things. So either you can make use of that time and do a whole bunch of interesting things, or you don't end up doing a lot. And I think that I was one of those students who really used that time, like, harness the potential of all of our committees, interned, did committee work, had a great time. So I think my time at GLC was honestly one of like the best times of my life. And like honestly, professors like Professor Pichawala and Daswani, like their doors were never closed to us. Like it was never like, okay, college is up, now bye. It was like advice on internships, advice on my future, advice on, okay, now sir, this is going on at home. What should I do? So I think GLC gave us such an amazing support system, and that's why I went back to college and I volunteer also, like well, not in GLC, but I went to KC Law and Nari Gulshahani, and I did like lectures on environmental law, on constitutional, on
How
PIL,
nice.
on international maritime law, because we had those two chapters in
Wow.
that, and it's so complicated for students to wrap their head around it, and I could only wrap my head around it because my dad was a sailor. So I used to sit with
Hmm.
my dad and try and understand from him. So now I took all that knowledge and I used to go back and I taught at KC and at Nari Gulshahani.
So you gave it back. You gave your whatever little you could. You gave it back. That's
Whatever
amazing.
we got,
So
we
when did
gave
you get?
back.
Yes, and so when did you get passionate about environment and animals? And how did you decide? That I want to become an animal rights lawyer.
So I don't think I think that I do environmental law, I do animal rights law. I've also worked with the Azim Premji philanthropic initiatives on their legal aid program. So that was for like under trial prisoners. I think from the time I was in law college, I knew that I was doing law to help society. So basically I wanted to, from the time I was 13, I started volunteering, and I knew I wanted to do something to make the world like a better place, a kinder place. Like no matter how like Miss World that whole speech sounds, like I had decided when I was young that's what I wanted to do. And so when I kind of matched my skill set with the sort of professions out there, from like my ability to like talk to people, to get people together, to like harness action in the right direction, to my ability to argue whatever little arguments I've done, like I knew that like law was the most perfect fit for me, and that's how I chose law. And I still remember when my mom gave me like the DD Basu when I was a kid. She actually wrote in it, like in our constitutional law commentary, she wrote like, be the eyes of the blind, the strength of the weak, like do something that's out of the ordinary. And that's how I started doing this work. And even when, like, my first senior was Gautam Patel, who's now a judge at the Bombay High Court, and he's
Hmm.
renowned for his work in environmental law. So being his junior, every time there was somebody who was economically sort of backward and they needed a lawyer to kind of help them out, or like, like people from low income families, they used to come to me and they used to ask me to appear at the child welfare committee for them and appear here and I would know nothing about it. But I would go to Gotham and I would to Justice Patel and I would say, can you please help me and explain this to me? And he used to explain all these laws to me so I could go there and appear for somebody. So I think I decided pretty early on that this is what I wanted to do in my life. So then that's kind of the route that I ended up taking. And then if you look at on the scale of vulnerability, like people are vulnerable, but there are more human rights lawyers. But when you look at like
Yeah.
animals and the environment, there are very few people there. And back when I started 10 years ago, nobody wanted to say that they were like, very few people wanted to say they were environmental or animal rights lawyers, almost like a stigma. So I got a
Hmm.
lot of like, oh my God, you're a lawyer. Like, what are you doing wasting your time doing animal rights? Or what are you doing wasting your time doing this? You're not going to make money out of it. You're never going to do this. So I used to keep getting told how my entire life path was like not a wise life decision. So, but I mean, it's like passion that drives you. And if you want to make the world a
Passion that
better
drives
place,
you.
if you want to make the world a better place for the vulnerable, I feel like the environment and animals are the most vulnerable at this point of time, because like there's hardly
Yeah.
any, but now it's become into a movement and more people are speaking about it.
Yeah. So like you mentioned, right? Animal advocacy is not usually considered a viable career choice. And you also mentioned Gautam Patel. So I'm assuming he was at some level like an inspiration or a mentor you kind of
You,
looked up to. Can you tell us a little bit more about your relationship with him in terms of mentor-mentee? And also if you could share a few anecdotes, from your early days as a lawyer.
So like when we were in Justice Patel's chamber, it was this guy called Kushal Moore and Amay
Hmm.
Malkan, and all of us were Justice Patel's juniors. And he like I remember the first time I sent him an email, I wrote to him saying, dear Mr. Patel and everything, and he pulled me into his chamber and he said, listen, boss, have I been knighted? So I was like, what do you mean? So it's like my first job and all in India, and I was so nervous and everything. He looks at me, he goes, dude, my name is Gautam, and that's what you'll call me. And so for like I think 1.5 years, I went between Mr. Patel and Gautam. Like every time he wasn't around and he wasn't listening, I would call him Mr. Patel because I was so afraid to say Gautam. And when he was around, I had to say it because that's just who he was. He's like super equal. He believes in that sort of sense of equality and everyone being on the same level. And till today, like I hear stories of people talking about him in the High Court, and like he doesn't even like let somebody else carry his own plate, his own lunch, all those things. He picks up and takes everything himself. That's just the type of guy he is. And that's how he trained us to be as lawyers, right? It was like you can pick up after yourself. You have to, from start to finish. There isn't going to be a clerk to do everything for you. Learn the basics. He used to like send me everywhere on my own. So I would learn everything that tomorrow, if I was left on my own, I'd still be able to handle it. And I thank him so much for that training because I found a lot of counsels had a little bit of ego and a little bit I don't pick up after myself and my clerk does this and I go there and do that. But with him, with Gautam, I wasn't allowed to throw any of those tantrums. I had to do everything myself. So because I
Hmm.
had to do all those things myself, when I ended up filing PIL after PIL, which were all like free, often I wouldn't have counsels or like, firms who would back me up so much. So a lot of the things like running to the registrar, things were things I had to do on my own. But thankfully I had been trained by this guy who told me that you're not too good to do anything. You will do everything
Wow.
start to finish. I had those skills, so it was amazing. And then the other thing with Justice Patel's chamber was that when he was when Mr. Patel's chamber before he became a judge, you weren't allowed. Your grammar had to be impeccable, and my grammar was not good. And I think that's just he just wanted juniors who were compassionate and that where you gave from the heart and you also kind of really uh, paid attention to the little things in life, and that's what he taught me to do. And I think that was the biggest skill. There's nothing I'm too good to do. I can do everything anyone else can.
Everything.
We're all equal. We're all on the same platform, and I have to pay attention to detail. And that's what being Mr. Patel's junior was for 1.5
And I'm
years. So
and I'm sure he's damn proud of all that you've done thus far.
I think all of his juniors did not so many PRs from to Kushal to this other junior he had called Prathamesh, who was in GLC, to his juniors who are now in Ahmedabad. Like, I think all of his juniors take on so many PILs. Like, he trained us up to, like do more for others than we took. So, it's kind of, I think that was the vibe in our chamber.
Wonderful. So clearly your grooming was amazing and you made full use of it. So that's
I
that's
did.
great to hear. What about, since the space of environmental laws and animal rights and welfare doesn't really have too many precedents, you kind of had to carve a niche for yourself in that space. Could you share a few challenges that you faced early on while trying to do what you were trying to do?
So, like now we become a movement, now people take it very seriously. But I remember when we used to file our first cases in the Bombay High Court, like I remember even for
Ambika,
the
I'm
horse.
just sorry to cut you. Your voice is cracking a little bit.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just gonna check my Wi-Fi. Sorry. I'm
Can
really
someone
sorry.
comment? Is it me or is it Ambika? Because then I have to do something about my Wi-Fi.
I think it's me. Somebody's written your voice is cracking. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I think we can go on now. No, you're loading. Ambika, it's your Wi-Fi.
Hello?
Yeah, I can't see you, but I can hear you. Yeah, you're
Is it
back.
better now?
Perfect. Yes, it's perfect now.
Okay, amazing. So,
So we were talking about a few challenges that you've had to
yeah.
overcome
So,
early on.
even when we filed that horse's PIL for the first time, like people didn't. Sorry, so people
Okay,
didn't
why
take
don't
it.
Ambika, let me just
Mhm.
try to add you once again. Maybe that'll help. I'm just going to
Okay,
remove you and I'll add you once again.
okay, super.
Just give me a second. Okay, I think I've lost her. Ambika, if you're there, can you send me your invite request because I'm not able to send you one. What is happening? Yep, found you.
Can you
Yes,
hear me now?
yes, I can hear you loud
Okay,
and clear. I
super.
can see you clear.
So, a lot of, so when I still remember when we first filed the horses case, we got a lot of like pushback from people, like, oh, like, should this, like, aren't human lives more important? Like, there was a lot of, like, with certain issues, people in India are sort of ready to accept that those animals are more worthy. But with certain issues, people weren't willing to accept it. So, like now the thinking amongst people is growing where we're understanding that the whole ecosystem, it's all connected, right? Our whole world, we're all one. It's all connected. So humans, people, animals, like if we, like what we've done to animals, the way we sort of raped and looted our forests has like sort of, we've ended up destroying an entire ecosystem. As we've destroyed that ecosystem, now we're realizing that we are dependent on that ecosystem for our own survival. So, I feel like in 2015, 2016, 2017, there was a sort of mass awakening, where people have now started accepting that animals are valid, they are important, they're thinking, they're feeling, they're exactly like us. And in the survival and welfare of animals is our survival. So whether it's a factory farm in which we try and keep animals horribly cramped, to the forests which we pillage, when we treat animals badly, we end up ruining our environment and the ecosystem, and that is exactly what we are dependent on. So explaining this to people in 2011, 12, 13 was a bit hard. And I feel after 14, 15, with the Nagaraja judgment, with the sustainable development goals, with all of this, with Paris, with all of this gaining momentum, I feel the world really woke up to how important these issues are. And suddenly the debate changed. It was suddenly, first it was always culture over animal lives, like human welfare over, and suddenly courts and us started thinking, no, maybe we need to balance the two. It is important. Taking care of animals is important. So now I feel that, whether I post something on Instagram or I draft an argument for court, or I'm sitting in front of a government officer and I'm talking to them, suddenly there is a higher consciousness and a better understanding of these issues than there was some time ago. So I think the biggest challenge I faced was that. And the second biggest challenge is financial. Now, animal welfare organizations and environmental organizations have jobs for people who do law and people who do advocacy. Back when we started, there were very few groups that took on people who were lawyers, took on people who were advocates. So if I'm being totally honest with you, there were for these 5 years where I didn't get paid, and I had to do assignments on the side and smaller things to kind of take care of myself. And it was pretty difficult. And luckily, I live with my parents. I'm an only child. So they said, okay, well, we can't give you a lavish life, but we can give you a basic life. So, I had a fairly basic life. And so I think these were the two biggest challenges. But now things are changing. People are more aware. People are more alert. People are more sensitive. There is this mass awakening. So it isn't as hard, I would say, as advocates for the environment, because, we're like, vulnerability is the same. We're starting to recognize that. We're also starting to recognize that as the effects of climate change keep exacerbating and they keep getting worse and worse, it's going to be the poorest of the poor who will suffer the most vulnerable. So we're starting to realize that there is this inextricable link with each living being, and as a result of which people are more receptive to the cause, and animal welfare NGOs are able to raise money, they're able to pay lawyers, they're able to pay policy people. And I think that is a brilliant thing, because the more voices you have for the environment, the more voices you have for the future of our planet, which is the best thing for us. And so I think it took some I think when I started, that was a bit challenging, but now suddenly the movement is a big deal. And normally I would go into a room and I'd always be singled out. And now I find the younger the people I hang out with, so I'm 36. I feel if I hang out with people from the age bracket of 40 to 50, I don't get much joy or support in those rooms. But I feel if I'm in rooms which are 20 to 30, almost every second person is like, yeah, you're absolutely right. And this is where I volunteer, and this is where I donate. And like, I'm only into sustainable fashion, and everyone is trying to reduce their carbon footprint. And I think the world is really changing, but it isn't happening as fast as it should. So I would say those are the two big challenges.
Tell me something. I know you've covered it in terms of how the subject was not really taken so seriously, but in terms of even gender biases, were you taken seriously at a young age where you were trying to bring a change?
So it's really funny, and you'll have a real laugh over this. Once I was appearing in the Killa court, and I was appearing for a few horses or something, I don't know, or maybe it was some wild animals. There was some wildlife that had been rescued from Crawford Market, I think. I don't know, I don't remember. I remember I was in the Killa court in Bombay, and like, I'm very feminine. Okay, like, I like to dress up, I like to look nice, right? I mean, like, it doesn't matter like how fancy your clothes are, but I like to wear a pretty white salwar kameez or whatever. I'm a woman, and I'm very like proud of being feminine. And I think that in the law they try to make women more masculine. I don't know if now it's different, but I still feel like when I was in college, if you dressed up too much, it wasn't the best thing. if you wore makeup, it wasn't the nicest thing. If you wanted to wear dangly earrings, once I had a senior counselor, I was entering the court, and he looked at me and said, "Madam, you have beautiful hair," which I think is an inappropriate thing for a 60-year-old man to be saying to a woman who is in her late 20s. And then he looked at me and said, "But you should tie it up." And I wanted to say, who are you to tell me that? Like, what is wrong? Like, if my hair is open, is it messy? Is it distracting anybody in the court? Will everyone will I not crumble if my hair is open? Like, I could never understand that, right? So I was in the Killa court, and I speak like a woman, and there was this lawyer on the other side who I think was such a horrible man, and he started imitating the way I was talking.
Oh God.
Every single thing. Can you imagine that? And this is in a magistrate's court. And I looked at the judge, and I was like, and I think I was like 26 then, or 25. It was like one of my first 4 or 5 appearances. And I looked at the judge, and I was like, "My lord, please, can you stop this man?" I straight, obviously, drama, no? You see so many court shows. I was like, "My lord, you have to hold this man in contempt. He's like, imitating me in court." And this is like one of those lawyers who's been appearing in that court for like years, and there I am, this new face. Nobody's ever seen me. And I was talking like that, and the judge didn't hold him in contempt. But when I shouted and screamed and said, "I'm not going to argue until he doesn't stop imitating me," the guy stopped imitating me. But that's what actually happened. And then another funny thing was when so yeah, like people have that slight thing. I remember once when I was 26 years old, and I went to meet the chief secretary, and the chief secretary reported to my mentor, Mrs. I was mentored by Mrs. Maneka Gandhi, and the chief secretary called her up, and he said that you sent some young girl to meet us. So she called me up and she said, "Can you please start dressing like you're a bit older so people take you a bit more?" I mean, we got our work done, but obviously he
Yeah.
called her up and he was like, "You sent some young girl to meet us." So I think those were like, but that was more benign. But I think in the law, I feel like sometimes senior counsels act very, very weird. I think that hair remark was totally uncalled for. I think that guy imitating me in court was awful. And the funny thing is, I faced more of these weird things in Mumbai than I have in Delhi and in
Just imagine.
Ghaziabad. I'm just saying, like, I've appeared in the Ghaziabad court where people were perfectly respectful, and in the Killa court, which is 10 minutes down from my house, people were so nasty. So
But thank you for sharing that, because I'm sure many can relate to what
yeah.
happened with you.
I hope it doesn't happen to more girls though. And I mean, I hope that if
I'm
it
sure
does
it's
happen,
changing. If we have seniors like you in the legal fraternity more and more, so I'm sure nobody's going to, have the guts to do these inappropriate
yeah.
things. Moving on, tell us, what achievements are you most proud of?
So I'm really proud of like the fact that we were able to bring these cases to court, whether it was the battery cage cases in the Supreme Court, whether it was the horses case in the Mumbai High Court where we got a favorable order and the carriages are now prohibited and the owners were offered compensation, and many of them I believe are taking it or have taken it. So like that, there are like a so there was the horses, there was the battery cages, there was the elephant the illegal elephant trade which is taking place in India, and how like elephants are used by temples, regulation of the pet shops. So we filed PIL after PIL in all of these cases. In some cases we got positive orders, in some cases they're still pending. In multiple states, municipal corporations wanted to kill stray dogs instead of sterilizing them. So it was through orders of the Honorable Supreme Court that all of those actions have been completely prohibited, and we have sterilization program pan India. So lots of like very exciting cases, from the big ones to the small ones. Each individual rescue of a cow, of a goat, of a horse, to like hearings before collectors, where there's been some sort of environmental destruction. So there's all sorts of little things that we appeared in.
With
And
every
I'm proud of each
order,
one of them.
every order that comes in your favor, which comes in the favor of, the good that you're doing, how does it make you feel? I just want to, like,
Oh
it's
my
just out of
God.
curiosity.
Like, I'm so happy when that happens. Like, when I can't even tell you, like, there are sometimes when we get these um like you feel really happy, like really happy. Like even when I came to Jallikattu, and that was I think one of the cases, and I think we the whole state of Tamil Nadu it was interesting, right? Because there were so many people in Tamil Nadu who said that, this is not our culture and compassion is our culture, and they didn't want Jallikattu. Then there were other people who wanted it, right? But when the first time the state tried to sort of regularize it in violation of a Supreme Court order, that action of the state was stayed. And I can't tell you like how like the feeling is that you feel like, all that effort that you spent trying to speak for animals, it leads to something. Like you're able to create some change, you're able to be their voice, right? So when there was that song which is like make me a channel of your peace, I feel that God uses certain people to do certain things, and I feel that I am definitely like a tool in the hands of the universe to make the world a better place for the environment and for the animals. And it doesn't always have to be in one way. Maybe at one point in time I'm doing legal work. At one point in time, I'm working with philanthropic organizations. At one point in time, I'm advocating for change with the government. And sometimes I'm just trying to, through my own little Instagram, trying to show everybody that you can look nice and everything without using anything that's been tested on an animal. So I think in our own way, like once you adopt a certain lifestyle, then like your life, like how Gandhi said that like his life was his message. It's kind of like that, right? For like each one of us, our life is our example and it's our message of what we want to be to the world, right? So I think my whole life is just showing the world that what, you can be sustainable and you can like have a fantastic life without harming an animal, without harming any living beings.
Thank you for leading by example. And there's a different shine on your face altogether when I asked you that question. So
it's like I think it's the most fun life. Like if you ask me, right? Like, cause I'm out here and I'm living my best life, and nobody is being hurt by it. Like, how much better can things get? Like when you get to like have fun and be surrounded by people you love and contribute and give to society, and at the same time you know that you haven't even caused this much pain to a living being. Now, of course, inadvertently I may have hurt somebody, but knowingly I'm not like doing that, especially not to like somebody who can't speak or anything like that. So it's a great feeling.
Thank you for sharing that, Ambika.
Thank you.
So
I love this question. This is my favorite question. I can go on forever.
Okay, so a little serious question. There's a massive gap between strict laws versus strict implementation, and we have laws in place, we have groups, we have associations working for the common goal, and yet animal welfare is not really government's top priority. Often it's because of there's lack of will and effort. So what according to you is one of the best ways to change this trend so that animal welfare is taken seriously?
So there's two things, right? Like there are some people in the government who are so receptive, like as I mentioned, like my first mentor was a member of parliament, and my second mentor, who was the chair of our animal welfare board, Ms. Poonam Mahajan, she was also a member of parliament, super supportive, amazing women. In our government of Maharashtra, like there have been police people, like like our current commissioner of Mumbai, Mr. Singh. There are the commissioner of Thane, Mr. Fansarkar, like so many of these amazing people who really went out of their way and they've like helped animals time and time again. So I wouldn't say that like the government isn't supportive, but I will say that in our bureaucracy, there are people who are overburdened. And I think that is often the reason why there isn't implementation, because people are just exhausted and they're overburdened and they're understaffed and they're often underpaid. So I think the reality is if NGOs take the matter into their own hand and they go and they start actively engaging with the government on positive policy change, the world will be a different place. That's what I feel, right? So if there is an order that's not being implemented, if instead of losing our cool, we go and we work with, find out who the right government authority is. Is it somebody in the collectorate? Is it somebody in the animal husbandry department? Is it somebody in the police? And we sit down and work with them, explain the laws to them, support them in their work rather than just constantly adding to their work. Because like we look at something simple, like we set up SPCAs all over Maharashtra. But when we set up the SPCAs all over Maharashtra, the animal husbandry department and came back and they said, madam, हमारे पास funding नहीं है, हम कैसे चलाएंगे? Then we moved a proposal through the animal husbandry department that SPCA should have funding. Now that is pending before cabinet. So now we have to go back and start following up with the cabinet saying, please pass this, please do anything. I mean, please take this to cabinet so that they have a budget. So sometimes the issue is that implementation doesn't happen because the government is overburdened. They're dealing with too much. So rather than sort of being a bit like upset that okay, implementation doesn't happen in India, have heart that we have really well-meaning people here, and also like like simple things like when we read our constitution, it makes it our fundamental duty to be compassionate to animals. That's amazing. So we can actually, like, rather than sort of negatively approaching saying, oh shit, implementation doesn't happen, if we work positively with the government and we work positively with whether it's the police, the bureaucracy, the politicians that we have, whether if we work in it, if we engage with them, there can be a sea change. Like we can really make India much kind of animals.
Wow. And the fact that I asked and you answered, telling me that the government is overburdened and it's not so much that there is lack of interest, it's such an eye opener because, I think at some level there is a lack of awareness and we end up blaming government for like most of the things. So thank you for pointing that out.
A lot. Because when I would go to these offices and I would sit with these amazing officers, like this brought tears to my eyes. Like when I was at Kulaba police station and I had to use the bathroom and the cops took me to the bathroom, they didn't have a light in their bathroom. And I'm not talking about like a bathroom that's out in the village. I'm talking about Kulaba, Mumbai, the South Mumbai, which is supposed to be like the nicest, like wealthiest, whatever part of India. And there was no light in the Kulaba police station for the women. Now, how can you expect that officer who doesn't have the most basic facilities, is overburdened, to be able to do 100% when she isn't able to cope with what she's doing? And the police do a fantastic job. Across India, I've noticed that the police have been very supportive. So I always recommend, like, collaborate with the government, collaborate with the police, work with them. I'm not saying that there aren't bad apples, because there are NGOs that are bad. There are people in the police and people in the bureaucracy and people in politics who aren't very compassionate and sort of just there for like votes or whatever. So there are people like that also. But I would say that there are more people who are better and just need a bit of support and somebody to like who they can work with and rely on to take a bit of the load off and to like make positive change. That's what I have experienced over these 10 years.
And thank you for sharing that perspective. I think many of us needed that. It's a great eye opener. Okay, so moving on, can you suggest a few simple measures to a layman, not necessarily a lawyer, that one can use or implement to ensure a better future for animals?
So what I think is that, like, I think this is the most important question. I'm so grateful to you for asking me. I think that there are three ways that we can help animals, right? And the environment. One is our lifestyle. So check everything you do, right? So if you're out there and you're over consuming, or you're eating meat, or you're whatever you're doing, right? We all have a way in our life that, because in the end, I read this one thing on National Geographic when I was 9 years old, when they were talking about elephants, and they said when the buying stops, the killing will too. So now it's up to us. Do we want to, how you use your power as a consumer? That's entirely up to you. So you can either use it for compassion. You can buy plant-based meat. You can buy shampoo and sort of body wash that doesn't, that's sort of sustainable. So you can use your power as a consumer to use things that are good for the environment. And then you have a second option, right? Where, so first is your own life. And the second option is activate and be a part of the change, be a part of the solution, right? So for example, like when we meet our local representatives, instead of just saying, oh, there's a water issue here, and then the garden issue there, and there's this there, and there's that, they actually bring up environmental issues and ask them, like, what is your environmental plan? Like, for even when you meet people from political parties and senior representatives, hold them accountable. Saying, hey, do you have a green agenda? Like every other country, people are thinking of a green agenda. What is the green agenda for our area? How do we make it more sustainable? So, individual action and then sort of collective action. And then I think the last and the most important thing is like giving back. So how are you going to give back? So I mean, for some people who are really busy, they give back just financially. Some people volunteer, and some people, like, so there are different things, right? So if you're a lawyer, you can volunteer your time with an NGO. If you're like somebody like my mom is 74 years old, but every day she feeds 30 animals, and that's her way of giving back. At 74, she doesn't want to do more, but that's what she wanted to do, and I think that's fantastic. So she's keeping water out, and she's keeping stuff out for the now. Every time she goes to the balcony, the crows go crazy. When she's down, like all the dogs and cats, because it's like they look at her and they think, that's my food factory. So I'm just saying, whatever it is that you can do, whether it's giving a financial contribution, or it's volunteering your time, or it's actually going out and like feeding animals, keeping water out for them. I mean, here is like a group which has nothing, right? They're the most vulnerable, the most exposed. We've taken away everything from the animals. So it's like we view them as entertainment, we take their children away, we've done such awful things to them. So there's so many ways in which we can right the wrong. And so it's really up to you. What do you want to do? Like, individually lead a more sustainable life, collective action, activate, hold people responsible, get out there, campaign. I'm a big fan of everybody getting out there. Like my 73-year-old mom will hear or something and she'll want to go protest, and I'll be like, go mom, just go. So there's nothing. I think that's great. Like, I think it's really, collective action is amazing, right? Because when people come together, then people see that, okay, there's a movement, so that's amazing. And whether it's coming down to filing a PIL, or going and seeing your collector, or going and seeing the municipal commissioner and talking about waste disposal. So collective action is critical, and holding people accountable. And last is giving back, which is my favorite, mine and my family's favorite, because I think giving makes you a lot more happy than taking does. And at least in my case, the more I give, the happier I get. I just hope that doesn't mean that I end up very broke when I'm old. But I think giving is like the best thing that you can do.
Thank you for sharing that. I have to say this again. This
Thank
conversation is so enlightening and like such a nice eye opener. Can't even begin to explain how
But
wonderful
I,
this
I
is.
love this forum and how it's like for people who have escaped the law.
Escape the law, it seems.
That's it, right? Like, everyone's escaped the law. Like, I was seeing that you guys had like a designer, and you had like people who do all sorts. So basically people who escaped the law and are like doing like different interesting things.
But the best part is they all had their learnings from the 5 years of law school, from practicing at corporate law firms, at litigating in high courts. They've taken those learnings and they've used it in their wherever careers they're at. So that I think that
Yeah, I mean,
law always has something to give. I feel
I feel
in
like
whatever
if you can
capacity.
like file a case and like hang around and like be there for like date after date and adjournments and everything, and like not lose your cool, and actually I think that teaches you so many different things, like determination, discipline, patience,
Patience.
like sahanshilta, like it really it teaches
Fantastic.
you like all these lessons, right?
Wonderful. So you're a core team member of the Good Food Institute, which is an NGO aiming to build smart protein ecosystem in India using food technology and innovation. Can you tell us a little bit about how it all started and what is your role as a core member?
So basically, at the Good Food Institute, I do like strategic partnerships, where I basically sort of build partnerships for the organization with the government and with different NGOs and things like that. And the NGO, so it's really interesting, right? Like, because there will be 10 billion people in the world by 2050. And there's no way we can feed all 10 billion of those people with our current food system, right? We're not going to be able to have enough we're not going to be able to raise enough animals to kill them, to feed them to people. We're not going to, it's like, it's just not sustainable, right? We have to think of alternative ways to feed people. So it's really interesting. In India, our work works on like when there's like more sustainable options for high protein, whether it's plant-based or it's cultivated meat that is grown in a lab, the poorest of the poor can have access to highly nutritious food in the most sustainable way possible, because animal agriculture just isn't sustainable right now. Like, the greenhouse gas emissions from the livestock industry is more than every plane, train, car put together. So it's just not sustainable. We need to find creative, innovative ways to feed people. And that's what we do with the Good Food Institute. We're building up this ecosystem of plant-based and cultivated meat. And again, it's collaborative, you know. We're not like working against anybody, but we're taking the whole world with us into this sort of pioneering food revolution and this technology, which globally is being accepted. Like in Israel, the prime minister himself went to taste cultivated meat. In Singapore, the government has legalized the sale of cultivated chicken. So globally, it's this food revolution, and we're just working in India so that India catches up to this great technology. I mean, with the biopharma sector we have, being a primarily agricultural country, there is so much potential for this sector. So that's what the organization
Wow.
does, and I build partnerships with them, which is exactly the which is going into a room, talking to people, convincing them to get on board, creating like building a movement, which is what I did as a lawyer for the animals and the environment, and now I do for an organization.
That's fantastic. And how old is this NGO?
Well, we've just started up in India, so we're about like 2 years old.
Wow, fantastic. Okay, so moving on, my next question is, do you have any advice for students who would like to pursue the field of environmental laws and animal rights?
I mean, I would say that it's like the best sector to work in terms of like if you wanna measure your life with impact, then that's amazing, right? Because if we were to like quantify suffering, and if we were to say how can your time directly impact and reduce the suffering, there is no field that needs people like this. And you know, for anybody who thinks that, oh, animals are less important than people, or you know, I want to, you know, like it's not as important, environment is not as important, they need to realize that it's all connected, right? In their welfare, if instead of farming them, we sort of grow plant-based meat and have like cultivated meat, we won't have the pollution from factory farms. I mean, if you go into the factory farms, you'll see it's like the poorest of the poor people are working there. If we aren't sort of pillaging our forests, we're going to have this, you know, these places is really, this is what holds the carbon, you know, from the atmosphere. So I mean, there are like, it's in our welfare to take care of the environment. It's in our welfare not to abuse animals. If you want to have the biggest impact on the future of the world, this is the sector you should get into.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Ambika. We have a few questions. Wait, there was one right here which is gone now. I think it was somewhere around which court do we have to go to when something around animal rights? Can you, I think it was Radhi. Radhi, can you write the question again? I'm not able to scroll. Yeah, I can see it here. Which court should we approach first for animal rights? I think that's the question.
So, which court should you approach? So the thing is that there's like a bunch of options, right? It depends on what is going on. So, for example, if there's an individual case of animal cruelty, then you should go to the police, and then that case goes to a district magistrate. Then, of course, there's 226, which is for a public interest litigation, which is a, you know, a larger sort of mass violation. So it just depends on which way you decide to go and what action are you trying to take at that particular point of time. When it comes to an individual case of cruelty, you go to the police station, you file a case under Section 11 of the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act, and then straight after that it goes to a magistrate's court, and you should be there to appear in the magistrate's court. For a larger case, you can file a public interest litigation under 226. But my advice always is that nobody should jump to file a PIL. First, take at least 1 year to work on the issue with the government collaboratively, because there are so many things, you know, like little sterilization programs, the formation of SPCAs. We didn't have to go to court for these things. We engaged meaningfully with the government. We raised awareness. So I think if people can begin first with law students can begin first with raising awareness, educating the police, educating themselves, going to the police station in a case of cruelty, going to a magistrate's court, appearing, you know, in a magistrate's court before a magistrate where an animal has been hit, or illegal transportation, or the illegal trade, or if we see pet shops which are not regulated, then going to the district collector with a representation. I would advise all of that first before you jump into a PIL, because if you jump into a PIL and by chance it goes wrong, it'll affect all the animals in the state, you know. So I'm not a big fan of jumping into PILs. I'm a big fan of taking it slow, engaging with the government, engaging with the police, trying to create change at this level, and then go up there if that hasn't worked for a year.
That is really informative. And Radhi, I hope you take these steps suggested by Ambika and do some really good work as well. Okay, so this brings us to the end of our chat. Ambika, thank you so much for daring to
Thank
act
you for
differently.
having me. Thank you for having me. I absolutely love your page. I love everything you guys are doing. I love that it's law with a twist because I think we need a little bit of creativity in law. And I think lawyers need to start taking themselves a bit.
Lightly.
I really love your forum and congratulations for all that you do.
Thank you so much. This means a lot. Thank you for choosing to be the voice of animals and taking care of the wildlife. You're truly setting an example, and
Thank
I'm
you.
sure 5 years from now we'll have like how we had a trend for human rights lawyers. There will be animal
Yeah.
rights lawyers after lawyer, and can't wait to see that happen super soon.
And then I can
Before we end.
retire.
Then you
And
can
then I can
retire. Then you can
retire.
probably mentor. You can mentor. We'll send them to you, and you can mentor. You can mentor them. So
Thank
thank
you
you
so
once
much,
again.
guys.
And just a quick announcement for everyone who's watching and for you, Ambika, as well. Unsuited is back, this time with season 3 in collaboration with the Arbitration Pledge Group. So join us this Sunday at 5 p.m. We have a live session with two wonderful, lovely ladies, Madhavi Garodia Diwan and Nandini Khaitan. The format is, like always, super fun, light, and with a twist of little inspiration and a lot of love. From the Grey Matter, of course, you'll have lovely Tanisha hosting, and we have Vikas from IDEX Legal. So don't forget to pre-register. The registration link will be in the Grey Matter handle, Instagram handle bio, and I will see you next week. Thank you so much, Ambika, for your time, and I wish you
Thank
all
you
the
for
very
having
best.
me so much. All the best to you guys as well. Bye.
Bye. Take care.